Hello.
Hello, Ashley.
Hello,
Go ahead,
How's it
John.
going?
good afternoon and good evening. How's everybody doing today?
Good. How are you?
Great, thanks for joining us.
No worries. No worries. Very excited.
Crystal, do we have people starting to join the live view already?
We do. We have a few that are already watching, so today's going to be a little bit different because we are live streaming on YouTube. And so participants will be able to participate in the live chat, but they won't be joining us here on Zoom unless they want to. I did put that invitation on the website as well, so if people pop in here, that's good too, and we'll get to see their faces that way.
Very good. Do you think we should wait a couple more minutes for any last minute stragglers to come through?
That's okay. We're actually recording today, John, so if they are a little late and they want to go back and see it later, they can do that as well.
Great, well, thank you for setting that up. And thank you all for joining. And Ashley, thank you for joining us today. I know it's a little bit late in the day for you there, so we really appreciate you joining.
No problem at all. Yeah, yeah. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on who's watching from where. Very, very cool to be here.
And we really do have a community that is quite global. I am willing to bet we have people watching this in the morning, evening, afternoon, night. It's fantastic. The book club so far is, let me just pull it up. Last time I checked, about 1,700 people. Unless Crystal, you can get to that faster than I can.
I think it,
1,773.
yeah.
So this was all started by Crystal a year and a half ago. In order to get people to read more books about accessibility. I love this idea. I joined the book club later on in the year. And well, with that, why don't I kick it off? Hi, my name is John Farrell. For anyone who's watching, if you've joined one of these sessions before, you know who I am. I am a web developer. I spent the first half of my career building lots of really inaccessible websites. I spent the second half of my career making up for that. And I really wish I had books like this one right here when I was starting off, because there's a great amount of content in here. We are joined today by the author of this month's book, Practical Web Accessibility, Ashley Firth. Ashley, would you mind giving yourself an introduction here?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, that was quite the intro. You've clearly done this before. Hello, everyone. It's really, really cool, first and foremost, to be here. For there to be a book club based on accessibility, right? When I first started learning this topic, quite a while ago now, there simply wasn't that sort of content to get into, and there also wasn't a group like this that could come together and discuss things and kind of pick apart what the best approach is for these things, challenge assumptions. So I think it's amazing what's being done with this group. So I'm very, very privileged to be here today. My name is Ashley Firth. I am the global director of engineering for a company called Octopus Energy. You might know of it. It started as a UK energy supplier, so supplying green electricity to customers. It's become now more of a group of companies. So we do electric vehicles, we do our own hardware and software, anything that will push the green transition further to make green energy plentiful and to take care of customers in the process as well. So yeah, we'll probably get into a little bit of history, but this is the company where my love for accessibility started, because a bit like you, John, prior to that, I was working in an agency world making websites that if I were to look at them now, I would not be too happy with how accessible they were. And so this role really kind of started that love for me.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I also have the co-host and founder of the Web Accessibility Book Club here, Crystal Scott. Crystal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal Scott. As John said, the founder of the Accessibility Book Club. I also moonlight as a web accessibility engineer. Launched my own business recently, Graceful Web Studio, where we believe building accessible is the only way to build. Super grateful for the club. It has really pushed me to get back to my love for reading. Really holds me accountable that I actually have to read the books and post about the books and share my thoughts and feelings. And so, what a great way for me to learn, and what a better experience than to be able to share that with a community who agrees, who calls me on my stuff when I'm not quite accurate, and shares in the experiences with me. So, yeah, thank you so much for hosting today, John. Thanks, Ashley, for for being willing to be here with us. I've got some great questions for you later in my back pocket.
Awesome. Well, with that, I wanted to dive in here and start off by saying that one of the things I really liked about this book, my key takeaway on it was that you kept going back to disability-driven design. And I really love that idea. I think though when you're in this profession, the more you get into it, the more you realize that there's checkbook compliance, and that's where a lot of people are starting off. But that is really not accessibility. That's the bare minimum. That is like minimum wage in terms of accessibility. And you really don't get to the next level until you start thinking about disability driven designs, getting people with disabilities into the design process early on and getting them involved. And what you end up with is a product that's so much better in the end. It's not just checking a box. I've studied this through various products. When you really get people with disabilities involved, you end up with a better product that is suddenly so much better for everybody. It's not just helping a small minority. It's making, you could suddenly make something that's totally inaccessible, accessible to somebody and better for everybody else in the world. It's amazing. And I really love that you kept going back to that. I was reading like, oh yeah, this is in chapter 1, it's in chapter 2, it's in chapter 3. I full disclosure didn't get through the book all the way. I have a Kindle here, so it is really, really narrow, but I think on a Kindle it was like 600 pages. So I'm going to, yeah, Crystal's showing it right now. This is a massive book. So one of my questions coming up will be about the size, but this is really a dense book and there's tons of great information. I am looking forward to going back to it time and time again. And with that, how did you write a book like this? There's tons of information in here. Where did you start? And how did you decide that this is done? Because I can imagine there's a realm of possibility where you could have just kept writing and writing and writing. So that's a
Yeah,
whole lot of questions.
that's okay. Yeah,
I
I'll
apologize
do
for
my
that.
best to cover them all. Yeah, been told by my brother that acts as a very good paperweight in between being able to be a handy reference. The reasoning initially was a bit like you said at the beginning. When I was looking for something to help me understand accessibility, there were a lot of books that were telling me how to be compliant. And for me, it's just not the same thing, right? I think having something like WCAG, having some rules to kind of get you started and help you understand the topic is great. But for me, that's a floor, that's not a ceiling. You don't stop when you tick those, you don't stop when you fulfill them. It is a way for you to explore the topic. And so for me, I wanted to create a book that I wanted when I started, which would allow me to explore it. And as you say, kind of pick up bits here and there depending on the type of project that you're working on. I will admit it's a lot to get through from back to front, but the idea is that it is set up in a way that you can go to each individual point, and that is why this idea of disability-driven design was in there, chapter on chapter, because regardless of where you go into it, it's important for you to think, okay, this isn't about how I check the box. This is how I think about the actual barriers that people are facing, how to spot them first and foremost, and then, as you say, how to make a solution that won't just cater to those people, it will cater to everyone, right? Adding subtitles to your video will help people that are deaf and hard of hearing, but it will help people that are learning a new language. It will help people that are in a noisy or a crowded room and want to engage with the content in another way. It's really just about opening up as many different avenues to provide as many different options for what should be the most accessible platform in the world. We have all of the technology, it's all there. By default, it tends to be accessible, but we often have strayed from that in the past. And so that was why it was so important to me. If you can think about how people are engaging with content as a means to an end, then you can start thinking about that right out the gate for when you're building a website.
I'm on mute there. Everything you just said resonated. So thank you for sharing that. And second thing is I really like that you start breaking it down by types of disability and taking into consideration the things that need to be considered for each of those. Because I feel like that is a much easier way to digest learning about accessibility versus reading the guidelines. I have a personal feeling that the web content accessibility guidelines can be difficult to read and understand. And I feel like a lot of people just throw their hands up and say, okay, I have no idea what this is. I can't even understand what this is, so I'm not going to try, versus understanding the why before getting into the how. Um, so I really like that you ended up with that approach. Was that your goal from the start, or was there something else that was driving the way you decided to pull the book together?
Yeah, good question. I think firstly, it's worth saying that you're right about WCAG, right? I'm an invited expert for the W3C, so we are working on the new version of WCAG at the moment, and that's come up an awful lot, right? Is you've already seen between, let's say, 2.0 and 2.2, there's more of a direction towards thinking about scenarios. So you'll now come and see, okay, here is a particular persona of someone in a particular situation with a particular access need. How do I cater for that? And that's great. It's a step in the right direction. It'll get us closer to what I think we ultimately need to get to, which is really thinking about user testing right out the gate. But to go back to the initial thing, the layout for the book, the way that it's organized in that way is kind of a culmination of the effort that went into it initially. When I was first learning and not finding the information that I wanted to find, I was writing down things that I had learned, things that I thought were helpful to other people. I was blogging, then doing articles. From that, you then go to meetups, meet lots of other people, like the people in this group that are also interested in the topic. You start speaking on it. And then I started speaking in conferences. And that was when the kind of conversation happened with A-Press, the publisher, about okay, what can we do to put this together in a format that would make sense. So although its size is a little bit intimidating in its kind of physical form, the idea is that every one of them will open up with here's the sort of access need you have. Here's really how many people it affects as well, because I think that isn't necessarily known. I think when people think about their entire audience, they're thinking, okay, I can make something pretty quickly for 85% of the audience. And that I think takes away from just how many people are in that 15 to 20% and just how wide ranging the ways that they access the web are. And I think when it's put in that context and you start to hear these numbers, these really big, often intimidating numbers of just how many people have visual impairments that want to interact with the web and how many people have hearing aids or color blindness or tremors and things like that. That for me really hit home when I was pulling on that thread of accessibility. I was like, okay, this really is something that truly matters, and we have the power with ourselves when we're building websites to do something about it. And so for me, I wanted to pass that on, and that was why the format was as it is. You are introed to an area that you might not know and to barriers you might not know, so that you can then do something positive about your website to help.
That all sounds great. I seriously could ask you questions all day long, but I promise I will not hog the spotlight here. And I will hand this off to Crystal because I know that she has been going through this and we've been chatting back and forth about how much we like this book.
Yeah,
So
for
I'm
sure.
sure she has a couple things to share here.
Thanks, John. No, I really loved where the conversation was going. I love the disability-driven design of the book. Totally agree. The way that it was organized by disabilities in the beginning, I think really made it feel real, like you're connecting with the users, with the people, right? Because, accessibility, we go back to it's about the people. It's about the users that are going to be interacting with your websites or your applications. And I really wish that there was something in the WCAG, maybe like a WCAG configured kind of in this format, like a grouping maybe where you talk about the different disabilities and kind of connect those in those different groups to kind of just give a better understanding. Because what your book did for me was really open my eyes to some different groups that have been kind of neglected. For me especially, I would say the cognitive impairments. I try to think about that when, I'm writing and I'm organizing information, but some of the things that you touched on here about, the visual spacing and different learning difficulties, memory, just the way that you phrase and how to speak with like an action kind of tone, to get your point across, and the tools that you gave for the different levels of like, copy and paste this in here and tell me if it's easy to read, if this is difficult to read. And, how often are we really doing that as we're building websites? And, especially now with the new AI revolution, like, is it helping readability or is it not helping readability? We're producing content so fast these days. And I know, Ashley, you can totally jump in here. Go ahead. If you got something you want to add right there, I can pause.
No, no, it's all good. It's all good. I want to try and cover as much of the great things that you're saying. I think the first point that you were making on the guidelines, it's entirely fair, right? These versions come out usually 4 or 5 years at a time, right? So they are at best a snapshot of where technology happens to be. And already AI is a massive consideration in the new one, right? You would look at some of the previous ones, they maybe don't even cover mobile in the way that maybe they should, which tells you just how kind of old some of them are, right? When they first come out, but they are a guide where they have to provide something for everyone, and that becomes really, really difficult in that respect. But the tooling, certainly for readability and the kind of to put the practical in the practical web accessibility, I feel like every section needed something that you could just at least take away, right? To start a conversation with somebody else. If you were working with your content teams or your social teams, that's an easy tool for them to use. If you're working with some of your design teams, maybe understanding heading hierarchies a little bit more and being able to test those, because everyone who's built a website has usually received a design where the headings don't quite match how the designer would like them to be in terms of a semantic sense. So having small things like that for me was about kind of adding those little touch points and those little thought points for absolutely everybody throughout a business, right? Not necessarily just developers, designers, content creators, even business leaders. Having these things will kind of set a little light bulb up here and there and go, yeah, okay, I know I should remember that, in the way that people have gotten so used to testing their sites when they're doing things, and making sure that their content is in a good place. Having those tools is vital from that side. In terms of the AI one, it's a really difficult conversation, because I think on the one hand, it's very capable of assessing content, right? We're going through plain language as a whole now, and AI is very capable at understanding those words and turns of phrases and things like that. But I do worry that it becomes more of a crutch for people in some instances, right? If we hand off a lot of our thinking about these things, it's kind of like using an auditing tool. It's handy to, notice a few things and things that you should fix. But again, it's not exhaustive, because the tool is taking in, again, the same checkboxes that we kind of want to move past, right? If you tell AI, I've got WCAG 2.2, I want to make sure it's AA compliant, and it will show you all of those things, but maybe not the stuff beyond it. And those are the things for me that I would say they're great as a help, but not as a replacement for you thinking about it at all. And I think that's my main worry for AI at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with more with you, Ashley. And I want to touch on AI a little bit too more as I jump ahead to your outsourcing accessibility chapter. But before I get too far ahead, so your practical tips and your giveaways throughout these chapters were really wonderful, because honestly, I had to pause during each chapter to go and implement something on my own website. And that's what I found most fun about this book, is that not only was I reading and learning, but I was getting excited about what I can do next. Chapter 3. So that is the reason that I'm not done with the book yet, because I got stuck on the theme switcher, right? So I had never heard of, all the years I've been developing, I'd never heard of using the CSS filter to do the theme switcher on a website. And so I've always been a little bit jealous of these very cool, like light mode, dark mode toggle switches on other people's websites. But I thought that it was way more complicated, way more complex. And the way that you broke that down and explained that, and I just got stuck. I got stuck, and I went and I put it on my own website, and I was like playing around with, making my images look like skeletons, because of course, it filters everything, and, having to go add the classes of like, don't filter this or else I'm going to look crazy, on like my own profile picture and stuff. But it really worked really well. I was super impressed with it, and I posted all about it, and I wanted everyone to go check it out. So for anyone watching, if you haven't dug into chapter 3 and played with the theme switcher, really kudos for that, Ashley, and the other little tidbits along the way about like styling subtitles and things. Like, I definitely had to put my book down for a minute and go play with the ideas. So that's really, for me, that was a huge win for the book. When you've got a book that inspires you as a designer or a developer to go do these things, like, how it was that your balance of like technical accuracy and approachability, is like, was that your whole thought process of putting in these tips and tricks? Were you trying to get people more excited?
Massively so, yeah. And to remind people that you don't necessarily need to know a huge depth of code in order to engage with some of these things. Of course, you can go very deep when you want to make a theme switcher. You can kind of create a whole new color scheme. You can operate it in a different way, but there are simpler ways to just get initially started with this, and that was really what some of the practical examples were all about, was trying to find a way to say, okay, you don't need to no code these to in order to kind of take the best out of these things. You can use them, apply them quite simply into your own websites, but they can also be used to start a conversation. You can, as a non-developer, go and have a look at these things and understand the concepts. And so trying to find the best ways of showcasing those things without saying, okay, here's another book that's going to require you to copy 200 lines of code and understand some of those things in order to get the concept. That was quite a challenge, but something that I'm really, really pleased with, in that it has done what it was aiming to do, which is that it got you, popping the book down for a bit and trying out some of these different things.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It was a little distracting, but very pleasantly distracted when I got to these items. So bravo to you on including those. I look forward to getting more. I've only made it to chapter 6 through my regular reading, because I do like to go front to back. But I was so excited about the outsourcing accessibility chapter. I had to skip ahead yesterday, and I'm so glad I did. There is so much information in here. I love that you touched on overlays and just how important it is to understand, the matrix and the profit side of that, the faking accessibility results, and just some of those real concepts that, people really need to know about and understand. I love that you listed the lawsuits and, how real people are, believing one thing and seeing another. And I think my question for you around that was, what is your perspective on the overlays or AI generated accessibility tools, and how are they evolving? Do you think they could ever actually do anything beneficial? Or are we going back to the concept? I loved in the book how you called them, band-aids. Like, if you're going to use them, like, use them as a band-aid until you're able to, have the surgery to fix the website. But then, yeah, I'd love to hear more from you on that one, Ashley.
Yeah, sure. They're quite a contentious topic, right? And the Band-Aid one is the best solution that I could come up with, because I tried to be mindful of the fact that a lot of people, even as we get further and further into this topic, some people have never engaged with accessibility before. There are some companies whose first engagement with that topic is quite scary. It's a legal, lawsuit that's been brought against them, telling them about a topic that they didn't know, that they are failing to meet, and even worse, they're kind of locking people out effectively from the thing that they have built. And I don't think anybody goes onto the web to make a bad website. I just think that there is an aspect of this that maybe hasn't been taught as well as it could have been. It's not really been, for want of a better word, accessible as a format to go in and kind of understand. And so for remedial steps, for saying, okay, now I know my website is inaccessible, I want to do something about it right now, but I don't know too much about it, I can appreciate that alongside maybe an accessibility statement that says that we're committed to doing better here and we will, but in the meantime, here is something. I think that's great. I think the tools themselves, even since writing the book, are getting a bit better, in terms that when people were shining a light on those kind of fakings of tests, that forced the companies to really rethink their approach in that respect. Because if someone says they're going to fix the accessibility on your website with 1 or 2 lines of code, it is too good to be true. But I think, much like the tools and much like Wcagatle, you just can't put your faith in a single thing in a topic you don't understand to sort that for you. It's about learning the topic, and it takes time, right? This book might make it a little bit quicker, but overall, you do have to understand who you're helping and how you're helping in order to help, right? And for me, I think there'll never be a good substitution for that. If we're talking about humans helping humans, then we really do need that empathy that comes with humans to understand how people are engaging, and to talk to those people about how they're engaging with content, so that we can make a solution that is best for them, rather than saying this tool, however clever, however advanced, might do it for us. What I will say, it's great that you've done the customization thing. I think now devices are doing more and more customization. I see a world in which sites are very aware of a user's particular preferences when it comes to font sizing and colors and whether they want reduced animation and things like that before you even hit the website. That prevents a lot of potentially horrible barriers that people might find immediately. So I love that as a trend, and some of those tools are ready to adapt a website for those settings that come in. But of course, in the book, it says that you can do that yourself. You know, when you understand the topic, when you're able to build those in, you can put that stuff in. So again, I would say a temporary fix, but never let it be the thing that takes you away from understanding the topic and helping people.
Thank you, Ashley. John, did you want to hop back in here, or do you want me to keep going? I've got more. Oh,
Oh,
and
I do want to
Sherry,
hop back in.
Sherry, did you want to add anything? I'm sorry. I know she had mentioned that she was having a difficulty joining the live stream, so she hopped on here on Zoom, which is great. But Sherry, if you had anything to contribute, welcome to put that in the chat or pop on live if you'd like. Oh, we saw you unmute, Sherry, but I can't hear you. Oh, I can barely hear
Very
you.
barely.
Okay, she's going to put it in the chat. Great.
All right. While Sherry is doing that, I really wanted to hop in here because I was recently digging into the accessibility overlay thing, and firsthand saw what an accessibility overlay did to somebody's website. And it made it less accessible is the short version. Um, all of these claim to use AI in order to generate the perfect website. And even for generating alt text, I've not seen one do a good job. What I've seen is them pull text from other areas of the website or just throw it into ChatGPT to come up with a description of what the image is, but none of that really describes what the image is for. So what I wanted to ask you about was your thoughts on where AI could help when it comes to accessibility, because we have the section AI and its potential applications. Now, I do believe that there is a possibility where AI can help people make things that are more accessible. But I think it's certain areas it could, and certain areas it could be harmful. So I'm curious what your opinion on this is.
Good question. I mean, the honest answer is that it's moving at such a pace that the answer could be different a week from now or a month from now, a little bit, to be honest with you. I think um, AI is very, very good at being able to pick up all of the things that we already know. And I think you were saying a little bit earlier, WCAG itself is quite difficult to understand. And so I think if you can take large pieces of information like that, like the understanding doc that comes with it, and ask something like AI to distill that for you so that you can better understand the thing that you're identifying and fixing, I think that's a great use case for AI, right? Being able to take something that might take hours to read and finding the thing that makes sense. And that is a super help from that perspective. I've seen it do some things in terms of color contrast, potentially very good. Being able to, let's say, generate subtitles and captions really quickly from videos, that has been around for a little while, but has gotten a lot better now. It's really, really impressive how capable that is. So for people that have maybe a lot of their previous content in video format and want to make that accessible, that is a very good use case for AI in order to take that. Of course, it still requires human intervention to make sure that it all makes sense, but that's a very good way of taking, again, large pieces of content, hours perhaps, and distilling it very, very quickly for someone that is accessible to add it on top of that. So I think the use cases will grow as time comes, and I think that is super, super, super helpful. I try to think about it more along the lines of, is it going to help me understand it a bit more? Is it going to help me focus on the things that maybe only a human can do? If it's distilling 4 hours of subtitles so that I can review it for 10 minutes, that's great. If it's trying to fix something where I don't truly understand what it's doing and what it's fixing, same as with your code, you probably wouldn't trust it to go and fix your code without truly understanding what it's done, or at least reviewing it, like you would with something like Copilot. I think the same is true for AI.
Yep, totally. Although I do think there are some people who are trusting it with their code a little bit too much right now and not quite sure where the errors lie. And I think you and I are on the same wavelength there. I believe that when I use AI, I can know when to trust it and when not to trust it. So I can know when to use its and get a lot of advantages and when not to trust it. Like the time I was asking it about the newest guidelines, WCAG 2.2, and it made up a completely fake success criteria. So that was an example of I knew it enough to not trust that, and I knew it enough to trust when it was describing something accurately. So that personal belief, I think there's a lot there. So it looks like Crystal just typed in the chat. Sherry said, thank you for the book. I'm starting a project to get content up to standards and compliant. Your book has given guidance and direction. Thank you for sharing that, Sherry.
Thanks, Sherry. I really appreciate that. Yeah, your point, confidently wrong, is something that I hear quite commonly with AI, and you can check the sources of things that come through for something like a chat GPT. But again, if you are relying on it to answer large questions for you, I don't have any stats, but I would imagine it's quite a low percentage that are checking all the sources when the answers come back in that respect. And of course, anyone can put anything on the web. So, it is pulling from an ever-growing thing that can be kind of changed or altered pretty much at any point. And so again, putting your faith in that is a little tricky. Putting your faith in things like WCAG, although not exhaustive, are meticulously put together by incredibly dedicated and talented people in the accessibility space. That is a good bit of content to throw at it, I would say.
Absolutely. Now, Sherry's comment here actually makes me think of a question that I had wanted to ask you. And that was, if as somebody is reading your book, how would you recommend they go through it? Because again, there's a lot of great content in here, but it's long. So if someone like Sherry is going through this, do you have any recommendations? Would you say somebody should read this front to back, skip around, go to whatever is best for them, or some other option?
Good question. Good question. I think everyone should read the first chapter if you don't know too much about accessibility, because a lot of the effort went into helping people understand why it's worth it. And I don't think I could convince someone to read a 50-page book if they didn't care about the topic, let alone 500-600. So I think that is a good place to start, and to understand why so many other people are thinking about it now as well. That's vitally important. I then think it kind of depends on the type of project that you're working on. So if you really bought the book in order to understand the topic, I think you can hop into the places that are interesting to you as and when you wish. They can be read piece by piece in any kind of direction that you want to. I think if you're looking for added reasons beyond the first chapter to kind of entertain accessibility as a topic, you should then go to the one that Crystal mentioned, which is about outsourcing accessibility. And despite what the title sounds, it's not advocating for outsourcing accessibility. It is a reminder of why you can't do that. And there are 3 things in there that I think are quite prevalent at the moment. We talked about overlays, the rise of those, the money involved in those, and the potential pitfalls for using them. There's the idea of design systems. So as companies get bigger, they build these Lego blocks that, if they are accessible by themselves, that's fantastic, but you can still misuse design systems in a way where, again, you could be confidently wrong when it comes to accessibility. You use a block in an incorrect way and suddenly your site isn't accessible. And then the one that I found most interesting to research, which is the rise of these kind of DIY websites. So there are so many new websites online this year compared to previous years, right? And I expect it to be much more next year. And these tools are allowing just about anyone to put something onto the web. Before, it was a question of how do we get designers and developers who are familiar with that craft into accessibility. Now the conversation is, how do you get just anyone into the idea of accessibility when they are maybe launching a business for the first time, wanting to set up a shop or something to that effect? And so the importance lies in, can we get those products, the ones that are really responsible by proxy for putting that many websites online, what are they doing to make sure that the websites are accessible? How are they teaching the people that use their platforms how to consider accessibility when they're building a site? And without too many spoilers, some of them do it well. Some of them could do it a little bit better. But it is a topic that I think for me was really interesting to research, as someone kind of going back another step and saying, how do I get anyone interested in this as a topic? So yeah, to finish off the question, 1 and 10, if you've never dealt with the topic before, and then the other ones as and when you feel that they're useful. There's bits on email if you're an email developer. There's bits on video if you tend to deal with video or imagery a little bit more, and then the rest of it as you go through that are all completely valuable. Final thing would probably be people don't know too much about mental health and accessibility. It's still an area that I think is growing in terms of understanding. There are some amazing pieces of work on there that someone called Harry Brignall did, all about dark patterns and bringing to light some of these kind of deceptive ways that people get people to coerce, certain decisions or actions out of people. And I found that incredibly interesting to dive into. So yeah, those areas I would say, but peruse at your leisure.
Fantastic. Thank you. I know Ash, Crystal has some thoughts that she wants to add to this.
Yeah, so chapter 10, going back there for the outsourcing accessibility, I really enjoyed reading about the different platforms. I'm sure not quite as much as you enjoyed researching them because I definitely want to dig in deeper. You know, some of these platforms I've never touched. My all-time favorite, which is Webflow, didn't make it onto your list, but that's okay. I found this as a developer who was using WordPress, who was using Shopify, even dabbling a little on BigCommerce, and I wanted a platform where I could build quickly and I could build accessibly. And Webflow was where I landed just because of its flexibility, but coming in as somebody who already knows accessibility to the platform, I'm now able to create beautiful, high performing websites that are fully accessible. But for somebody who doesn't come in with that accessibility knowledge, absolutely grabbing those blocks and dragging and dropping. And there's so many different options out there right now for, oh, we've got this carousel option and just clone this into your project. And, the carousel, of course, doesn't have any name role values. You can't use it with a keyboard. Your slider dot buttons aren't actually buttons. Like, you completely understand, but it looks good, right? And it works with a mouse, which, are the two things that a lot of people using these DIY platforms right now really care about. Like, how does it look and can I click it, right? So I really, really appreciated your take on here, especially when you started talking about the accredited templates. So I circled this and I bookmarked this because this is an area I have been giving some serious thought about getting into. And I love here that you talked about how it would benefit everyone to have a form of accreditation for templates that have been tested by those with disabilities and have achieved a certain level of compliance. I love this idea. And they're not out there right now. They're not in this marketplace. When I worked at Zenith, I remember we spent a lot of time looking for accessible templates to help us build accessibly faster, right? And there's almost nothing on the market. If you go to like WordPress, I I believe you can like type in like the accessibility tags, right? But then you look at the templates, they're not accessible. They're really not, and they've got these tags on there and maybe they were designed with some accessibility considerations, but I shouldn't say they're not accessible. They're not WCAG conformant, right? And so I think that there's that fine line. And so having this idea of these accredited templates was just so appealing to me. And I was just curious in all your research, Ashley, have you found anything like that out there?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that you said about the tags was important. You need to know what you were looking for in order to search for that, wouldn't you? You'd have to be the person that says, "Oh, let me look for accessible templates." In an ideal world for me, there would be no template on there that wasn't accessible. There are certain bars that you need to hit in terms of quality, in terms of testing, in order for these things, because not only are you using something like a Wix or a Squarespace or a Webflow, they now have marketplaces, right? People can make
Hmm.
incomes building templates. I mean, you've been able to do that as far back as WordPress, and there's nothing that stops people, much like there's nothing stopping them from building a website and publishing it, from making a template that is used by hundreds, if not thousands, of people without accessibility considerations in there. Now, I have noticed in marketplaces that they are starting to flag things that are accessible a little bit more, which is great. But I would like to see those areas get to a point where it's more like everyone has to do it, otherwise you can't sell your template, rather than, oh, this is something I'll opt into because maybe more people are looking at it, right? I really don't lay this at the feet of people that just want to get started and make their first website and share their ideas or their products with the world. I think that's brilliant, and we shouldn't expect everybody to understand that. Again, it really comes down to, if those tools are being used by people without that knowledge, how do those tools give those people that knowledge? Or failing that, how are these tools so robust that they don't need that knowledge, right? That it's mandatory to add alt text for images that you're adding, and it's mandatory to have a template that is accessible by default, and the user can't change so much that it becomes inaccessible. That, for me, I think is where those really need to get to. Yeah, sure, sure.
Thanks, Ashley.
All right, continuing down the same path. I love the way you're thinking here. Absolutely. The burden should not be on the person who makes something cool in their house and they want to have a website in order to sell that thing. It should not be their responsibility to be able to have a tool that builds them something accessible. So what do you think is going to be the biggest driver in, say, getting big organizations to force accessibility or encourage accessibility, however you want to put it? Is it things like the European Accessibility Act? Is it efforts for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 3? Is it AI organizations? Is it some people are now saying we should like lean into AI and have that be everything. I don't believe that, but is it one of those? Is it something else? What are your thoughts on how do we do this? Because it seems like the web is expanding at an ever growing rate, especially with AI lately. So it seems like it's getting harder and harder to catch up and get everything in. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's a tough topic. The answer is probably it's a mixture of all of those things in order to drive it a little bit forward, right? I think the new guidelines that will come in will be helpful, and they will place more of an emphasis on people being able to test things, and that be the sort of thing that gets passed. Has it been tested by people, right? Rather than has it gone through all the various checks and received ticks, because as we know, compliance is not accessibility, and you can pass a test without that thing being actually accessible. So I don't think we can ever truly rely on that. Let's assume that's a helper. It gets us off of nothing into something a little bit more as we move in that particular direction. In terms of what else is going to help us to kind of kick on in this particular area, for me, what do I think? Remind me of the second part of your question quickly.
Oh, now you're trusting that I remember the second part of my question.
Sorry.
Is it the second part of it, I think, was, is it things like the European Accessibility Act? Is it the next version of the
Of
guidelines? Is
course,
it
yes.
AI?
The what I'm pleased about is that more and more people are finding the topic organically, right? There's, I don't know if it's the sad thing, but something that is definitely driving it is the rise in lawsuits, to be honest with you. I think things like the Accessibility Act bring about more news articles on those things. So high profile companies and celebrities will have to take remedial action on their websites, and that will help the people that use them. But it would also make a news story. Then people start to wonder, oh, what does that look like for me? I'll maybe start auditing my website for the first time, and I'll do something in case or before I get in trouble. It's really worth noting that every single lawsuit that comes about, even if it doesn't make the news, even if it doesn't go to court, the end result is remedial action. So you really have a choice of, do I do something about it now, or do I get sued and do something about it? There is no not doing something about it realistically, right? And so I do think it's great what's happening for the European Accessibility Act. Again, it puts us a little bit further, but not at the end goal, because the Accessibility Act will then look to WCAG to say, well, this is what determines whether a site is accessible or inaccessible. And we already know that that isn't quite everything that we need. So again, if you get laws that are a little bit stricter, people are thinking about it more because it's in the news more and more. And on top of that, we maybe make a new version of WCAG that we can rely on a little bit more as being more encompassing and taking in more kind of testing in that respect, then I think we get a lot closer. So I think it will require each of those things. And then as we make the new version of WCAG, more tools will come out. And I imagine AI will underpin a number of those tools, right? And so between those things together, we end up, I think, a couple of years from now, and I don't think it's even that far away, is a much better and more positive landscape, right? Accessibility is getting better year on year. It's quite bleak if you look at the whole 10-year view because it hasn't really changed all that much. But then, as we see, if we even take the AI thing, as adoption gets bigger and as understanding gets bigger, it skyrockets in terms of the amount of people that are involved in it. And I think the same could be true of accessibility.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We are getting closer to the top of the hour. Crystal, do you have any other questions?
I think I would like to know what Ashley would consider like his coolest giveaway in the book. Like, what do you want people not to miss when you give away like the theme switcher, and like what is the coolest thing that we can glean from your book?
Oh, that's really on the spot. I like that question. I've never had that before, so I don't have a prearranged answer for it. I will say that the auditing stuff at the end is a culmination of a decade's worth of trying to take what is a really complicated topic and boil it down into initially some questions that you can ask yourself, right? And I think that isn't designed as a checkbox, that's designed as the thought process distilled over having to audit a range of different websites for private businesses, for governments. How you think about that stuff when you have the requisite knowledge is incredibly helpful. My my favorite example, I think, is probably everything to do with video subtitles. I think it's so cool what people can do with them, and I never see it used in any
Mm,
way, shape, or form, right? The things that you can do to kind of style what they look like, to intone who is speaking, if there's a noise that comes through, what is being spoken as it's being spoken in past and present, a bit like karaoke. I find that stuff really interesting and a lot of fun to work with as well, because that's kind of the thing. A lot of people get into development because it's a lot of fun to build things, and there are a few things inside the book that genuinely are fun. And then probably all of the things that relate to personal preference. I really love this because I think Windows high contrast mode has been around for a really long time, and that's people's personal preference overlaid onto a website, right? I really like this idea that a website will be thinking about the user that uses it before they even reach the website. And if someone immediately comes in and says, I don't want any flashing videos, I don't want any crazy animations, I'm quite, visually impaired, so I'd like things to be a lot bigger, but I would want my website to respond to that. I much prefer a dark mode. I love this idea that people could just safely navigate the web, go to all of the things that they want to go to, and find an experience that caters to them. And I think that really isn't as far away as people might think it is if we take advantage of those things. So those are all media queries that you can hop into with CSS, with JavaScript. You mentioned you've used one yourself, which is really cool as well. So I think those are probably the ones that are good for me. But I will do a final small shout out to building an accessible overlay, because the amount of overlays that I have come across in my time as a consultant, as a developer, that pops up on the screen and there is no way to close that unless you have a mouse at your disposal to do so, is it drives me mad. Create something called a keyboard track, where someone would never be able to close it if they didn't have access to a cursor or some sort of pointer gesture in that form. So that one's a big one for me too.
great. Thank you, Ashley, so much. Yeah, I am looking forward to getting into the 10 years of knowledge and experience that you've put into the tools and auditing chapter. I understand that there was a takeaway as well, right? You have your own access checklist within the FAIR framework. And is this available for readers on the website for free download? Can we give this one away, or how do we access this? It probably gives directions in the chapter I'm about to read, but
It does, it does. It isn't set up anywhere other than within the book, to be honest with you, because the information that's in there is kind of related to the stuff that's in the chapters. I hadn't considered trying to put it out as a standalone thing. You've given me a little bit of inspiration there. I might have to go and
Okay, I was envisioning like there was going to be a free download link somewhere where, or like a website you had set up somewhere. No.
no, not for
Okay.
that particularly, to be honest with you. Like all of the live code examples are available online as well. But the checklist and the framework are within the book itself. But
Okay.
perhaps that's something I can take
That's
a look.
okay. So if people want the checklist and the framework, they have to buy the book, which I think everybody in the Accessibility Book Club really needs to buy this book. If it's the only one they buy this year, it is the one that I would highly recommend. It's been so good so far, Ashley, and we should probably be wrapping up here shortly, which I'll let John do. But I just wanted to give you kudos again. Thank you so much for bringing your knowledge and sharing it with the world and making it understandable and approachable and giving us these wonderful little practical takeaways that we can go and use ourselves.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, I mean, I'm sure we'll say this again at the end, but I think what this whole group is doing, what the whole book club done, what you've done in setting it up is brilliant. I would have loved to have had something like this available to me when I started thinking about the topic. And so the idea that there is already 1,700 people that are going on that journey with you, and that you're still going on that journey. I'm still going on that journey 10 years later, you know, as accessibility continues to evolve. We'll never be perfect and know all of it, but the fact that there is a community like this one to keep learning, and like you say, kind of make ourselves responsible for reading something once a month that makes us a little bit kind of more knowledgeable about this area is brilliant. So massive kudos right back to you, and thank you for the kind words.
Thank you.
And just to highlight this, I said, probably not even going to share because it's going to be nice and glowy on my Kindle here. I'm on page 230. There's a lot in this book. I am going to keep reading it. I just want to echo what Crystal said. I would highly recommend this book to everybody in the book club. It is well worth it. There is a ton of great information here. This is going to be sitting on my desk as a resource to go back to, even though I consider myself to be a web accessibility expert. It's great to have this to go back to. So just another shout out. I'd highly recommend anyone grab this. There is one more question in the chat, which is I think a good one for us to end this on, which is any recommendations on next reading for the compliance journey? This is for all of you. Ashley, would you like to start off with that one?
It's a good question. I think if you're a developer, or someone called Manuel Matazovic created a book called Web Accessibility Cookbook, which is about creating inclusive experiences. He dropped that at the end of last year, I believe, with O'Reilly. It has a cute dog on the front, which is as good a reason to get a book as anything. But if you were starting to go into more of the individual component aspects of things, I think that would be really, really interesting. I think Sherry's question is was related a little bit more to compliance, if that's true. A good friend of mine, Gareth Slynn, created one all about the European Accessibility Act. So if you are based in Europe or you sell in Europe in any form, it's very handy to know the specifics of the AA. My book covers it a little bit in the sense it's going to be, you know, WCAG that is underpinning the stuff in the European Accessibility Act. But if you're looking for something very pertinent to that, that would be a really good read. You can find both of those on Amazon and wherever you get your books.
Awesome. Some of those are quite familiar. Crystal, do you have any recommendations for the next reading for your compliance journey?
Absolutely. So WCAG for designers, we read that one in February. Super digestible. She really mapped them out to the success criterias and gave some really practical information for touching on compliance for designers, which of course translates to developers as well. And then, yeah, we've read Manuel's book twice, once last year in the club and once this year in the club. I love that book. Absolutely, highly recommend it. So yeah, those would be my top two recommendations for you, Sherry.
All right, and my recommendation for you, if you looking for recommendation for your next reading for the compliance journey, is to keep reading with the Accessibility Book Club. Next month, we have What Can a Body Do? How We Meet the Built World by Sarah Hendren. Keep reading with us, keep learning, and keep engaging. And we look forward to talking with you all throughout the month and meeting with the author, Sarah Hendren, at the end of next month.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Ashley,
setting me
so
up for there,
much.
Sherry.
All right.
And thank you, Ashley, for joining us. It's been an honor to meet with you. I really do appreciate this book. I'm not just blowing smoke here. I am a slow reader, and I will get through this book eventually, but I really have enjoyed every part of it that I've gotten to so far.
That's really kind. Thank you. Thank you. It was an excellent outro as well. So I appreciate that. We love a plug for next month, and I'll be attending one of those as well. Final thing for me, if you run into any problems with the book or you want to know anything more, you can find all of my details online. I'm on X and various other social networks. But hopefully you can all kind of keep going on with your amazing accessibility journey as well. So thank you for letting me sit down with both of you and with the group as well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Goodbye,
Thank you
everyone.
all. Talk to you all later.